The season ended 2-3 weeks ago now for the Phoenix Suns, and yet there's still a ton of noise, a ton of mess around this organization. On today's episode of Locked On Suns, does anyone care to quiet it down? Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we're back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 7 seasons and the host of the Just Basketball Show wherever you get your podcast. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen here to kick off your Tuesday. Welcome to the show. Hit follow or subscribe wherever you're finding us if you have not done so already. We are free and available each and every day on all platforms, including YouTube. So hit that button, get a new episode in your feed every single Monday through Friday. Become an everyday or get locked onto the Phoenix Suns all off-season long. Today's episode, guys, brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Whatever show you turn on right now, whatever podcasts you turn on, local radio, articles, everywhere, somehow the Suns are still in the news. Whether that is Stephen A. Smith, whether that is Kendrick Perkins, whether that is just your favorite NBA content creator making videos and doing articles, cooking up trades and drama and tasty morsels of rumor. The Suns are right in the middle of all of it. And they have not done a lot to get themselves out of the middle of all of it. Of course, the history leading into where we are right now, given the trades that they've made, how all in they are, the way that Mat Ishbia handles himself and speaks publicly, and everything. The high-profile playoff exits each of the past 3 years, all of that is why they get attention. But they also get a lot of attention because of who's on their team. Kevin Durant and Devin Booker and his quietness at various points. And I think people not fully feeling like they understand him. And Bradley Beal finally changing teams and falling short. There's all sorts of reasons. Frank Vogel getting fired. Frank Vogel saying some of the things that he said and the way he was acting on the court throughout that playoff exit, throughout the season, and the Athletic article about how the locker room was giggling at him while he got mad at them. All of it. All of it's real. All of it's pointing in the same direction. But of the names that I just said, the two that I think bear the most responsibility for why the attention is pointed toward Phoenix and to get that attention off of the Suns are Mat Ishbia and Kevin Durant. I'm not convinced either one of them wants the attention off. But I can tell you both of them are not doing what they could be to get it off. To deflect it. To exude a sense of calm around the organization. To just tell people to shut up. None of that's happening. Ishbia gives a press conference a few days after the season ends that I'm not sure the purpose of, even after it has now happened and Vogel is gone. To me, the only two takeaways from that press conference are that Ishbia was incredibly frustrated and incredibly personally offended by the national narrative around the team that he bought last year and the way that that he built the roster, the way that the season unfolded, and the way that they underperformed in the playoffs. He, I think in large part, took the podium for that press conference about a week and a half ago to bark at everybody who he thought had it all wrong. I think the other purpose of Ishbia giving that press conference, I mean, actually, to be honest, I'm not sure beyond that. Because what he did not do is have an answer on the coach question. He basically indicated he didn't have an idea of when things would change, if they would change. He kind of passed the buck when it came to some of the roster questions and just a how did we get here type of concern that the media had, that fans obviously have. And he sort of didn't seem to have much to say there. There's really no purpose to having that press conference until those answers are there. I guess there's a sense of ownership and accountability that is I can respect. To be, I'm front and center. I'm the guy who made these decisions, so I'm going to be the one to answer for them. But he didn't really answer for them. So does he subconsciously, is there a part of Ishbia that likes the attention? I'm not even saying that with judgment. I think it would be understandable. Wouldn't be the first owner, wouldn't be the first person to feel that way, to have a role in an important thing like a sports team and want to be the face of that. Nothing wrong with it. But where it becomes a problem is if you don't embrace what comes with that. You don't just get to push back on the national narrative and tell everybody that the house is not on fire and set the message you want and avoid any of the other negativity or the other questions people might have, right? Are you Jerry Jones and Mark Cuban or are you not? There's a reason nobody can ever stop talking about the Cowboys, and it's not just because they generate attention, although that helps, but it's circular. The media would talk about the Cowboys a lot, maybe not as much as they do, but they would, even if there weren't a ton of fans, because they're a good story. The owner invites it. They set these high expectations, but they cheap out, and they move, they churn through star players, and they can make a star, and they can move on from a star, and all those things. I don't think the Suns or Ishbia are on that level. Nobody is. But Mark Cuban's out there. Mark Cuban answers. Mark Cuban, there's rumors in 2022 or 2023 about Luka wanting a trade potentially or uncertainty around his future. Cuban comes out and he'll have something to say. May not be wrong. He might be BSing us, but he's going to talk about it. You have rarely heard a press conference from Mark Cuban that sounded like the one Mat Ishbia just gave. There's something that comes with that. Now, what would honesty look like? I think is a fair question from Ishbia at this given point in time. I don't know. Because it was ugly. I think there's a fair amount of what's happened in terms of the lack of financial flexibility that this Suns team now has, that truly, even if you can put a lot of blame for a lot of the moves and how quickly and brashly he's made all of those moves on Ishbia, the collective bargaining agreement got passed like 3-4 months after the KD trade, and I don't think that they would do it in that exact same way again if they knew what was coming there. So what is he supposed to do? Make an excuse like that? I mean, it's not too different from what KD kind of said, who we'll get to in a moment, after Game 4 in the sweep against Minnesota, which was, we put ourselves in this situation. Anything that I say is going to come across as an excuse, and, it's not going to look good. But that's when I come back to vision. You've heard me say that word 100 times. If Ishbia wanted to quiet things down, and he has an opportunity to do it as soon as the introductory press conference for Mike Budenholzer, if he wants to do that. Now, he didn't speak at Frank Vogel's, I don't believe, but he could speak at this one. Personally, I would have probably not spoken at all until the head coaching decision was made and have this introductory press conference be the first time you speak. But what's done is done. It's over. If he wants to set the record straight and truly exude a level of vision and a level of patience and calm that he clearly wants. He wants that to be what people think is going on in Phoenix. If he wants that, he has an opportunity to make it so. We're not trading the big three. Pat Riley just did this. We're not trading Jimmy Butler. We're also not signing him to an extension. Our number one priority this offseason is to have our players be available and get better. We have some decisions to make as far as if that isn't going to happen, what we want the roster to look like. Now, Pat Riley's earned that. Pat Riley has the trust of everybody in that building and the respect of everybody in that building in a way that Ishbia probably doesn't yet. So I'm not saying it has to be done the same way. But you have to do something. If it is so painful and frustrating and humiliating that people are talking about you in a way you don't like, well, coming out and being defensive is not going to get him to shut up. Coming out and being defensive is going to make it worse. What can make it better is to say, here's what we are doing. We're not trading these players. We hired Budenholzer for X, Y, and Z reasons. We believe in him for X, Y, and Z reasons. We believe in this roster. I believe in this roster. I don't think we need a point guard, or I do think we need a point guard. I think we need this element of our roster improved and not this element of our roster. Here's how we feel about the draft. And let the chips fall where they may from there and be ready to answer when it comes. It's not that complicated. It just requires a level of introspection and honesty, and honestly a little bit of eating you-know-what that I think a lot of people aren't willing to do. But it's part of the job. And you certainly can't get mad when people say things you don't want them to if you're not even willing to say what you need to. Which brings us to Kevin Durant. Does he care? Is this benefiting or hurting him? All the nonsense that's being spilled across the airwaves? I'm not so sure where it lands. We'll talk about it next, though. First, today's show brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. I'm looking at Tuesday night's NBA odds. We have Minnesota back at Denver with the Nuggets regaining home court advantage. They're minus 180 favorites. That's a pretty nice one. You could probably get some Cavs-Celtics Game 6 odds, and those will probably be skewed toward Boston. A little money there. Just to get yourself kicked off with the bonus bets, $150, of course, to be specific, and then you're off to the races. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And we're back. Let's go on to Kevin Durant, who has had even more said about him than the team at large, I think you would have to say. Chad Johnson, Michael Wilbon, Stephen A. Smith, Kendrick Perkins, a whole assortment of people, not to mention that every blog of every other team and podcasts and anybody talking about the NBA offseason has probably already gotten their Kevin Durant fake trade posts up. I don't think he cares about that, but the bigger picture, the bigger names, the mainstream conversation, in my opinion, you should care about, especially if it's untrue. We talked about this a little bit on Monday's show with Brandon Duenas, and I think he and I were largely on the same page, right? That a lot of this doesn't seem incredibly believable in terms of the nitty-gritty details of what's being said, which is that he would apparently be interested in playing for the Heat, if you believe Chad Johnson, that he is, completely blocking out a coach in Frank Vogel down the stretch of the season, and that it might be untenable again here in the Valley with Kevin Durant. I say again more so on Durant's side. I'm not sure if I believe the specifics of X number of months that KD didn't talk to Vogel, or that he's somehow on the verge of asking for a trade to the Heat or anything like that. But the part that I think Brandon and I couldn't fully wrap our minds around, which is why I wanted to talk about it again today, is why not speak up? And you can say, and I'm sure anybody listening who is a fan of Kevin Durant will already be thinking this, Well, what does he have to gain? He doesn't really address this stuff anymore, you know? He'll have the little goofy debates on Twitter, and he'll, you know, do his media stuff as an athlete, and he's been great about that. He always appears on the, you know, after losses, after wins, after injuries, whatever. He'll be there, and he's very transparent. But what does he have to gain from, you know, not going after, but addressing any of these more out there claims? And he doesn't do it. Okay, but he does do it. He kind of does do it. Even recently, right? Okay, the Bill Simmons podcasts that he did when he got to the Warriors. All right, you know, maybe we're not getting 4 episodes over the course of a year or whatever that was with the biggest sports podcaster and the most famous athlete on the best team in the league talking for hours. Okay, sure. I'm not expecting that. But he did it. August 2021, he also went on Draymond Green's podcast and cleared the air about some of those Warriors moments. Now, they were embellished, of course, but they talked and they addressed it and they were real about it. You also might have forgotten, but Kevin Durant, in theory, has his own podcast. Remember that? He hasn't posted an episode, I believe, since he came to Phoenix. But he has it, and he even did a special video episode, not really of that podcast, but a video interview production for the boardroom not even last. That was only a couple months ago. So there is something in KD that wants to create a narrative around himself, that wants to communicate what he is to the people. I don't honestly remember what I said about that interview that KD did with Rich Kleiman for the boardroom last season. I don't remember. Maybe I talked it up in a way that I'm doubling back on now. I'm willing to own that, but that's sort of the experience with KD, and it's why I think he gets to a point where it would benefit him to speak, right? That felt like, okay, he's kind of, you know, ingratiating himself with the Suns organization and with this new chapter of his career, and it's all very good. And now, okay, there's a bunch of noise. Where's it coming from? Why is it there? With the Thunder, the Warriors, the Nets, this part of the dynamic he didn't participate in. You know? He didn't. There were rumors that he would leave the Thunder, and then you have the Mr. Unreliable thing, and that's not fair. It wasn't fair to him. Calling him unreliable because he chose to sign somewhere else in free agency is a pot shot. It's nonsense. It wasn't a good take. It wasn't a good way to send a legend of your franchise out, even if there's hard feelings. The Warriors, there was the whole Ethan Sherwood-Strauss is not talking to anybody and seems to think he has it all figured out, and I'm not going to the Knicks. I'm not going to talk for weeks, and he left. The Nets, I'm not going to pretend like I had as close of an eye on that portion because he was injured for part of it and it was all such a mess. And frankly, I think he was not in the wrong. So it's not so much a thing that I'm looking to him to answer for because Kyrie's not taking the vaccine and James Harden is asking out and all that type of stuff. I'm not going to hold that against him, but I think the same thing could be said that there was just an air of messiness and it lingered. Even if it wasn't KD's fault, he didn't do what it took to make it go away. Plenty of people are non-confrontational. I'm not a very confrontational person all the time. I'm not over the top about it. I feel like I can have conversations behind the scenes that need to be said, but I'm not going to pretend like I know what it's like to come out in front of the world, millions of fans, and say a whole bunch of stuff in a way that's fair and reasonable and any of that. So, but it would help him. It would benefit Durant. And that's, again, same as with Ishbia, why I'm talking about it. You also look ahead to the summer, and KD, as we talked about on Monday's show, has this extension looming. if you're any player, any athlete in the history of sports, I would assume Kevin Durant is going to want that extension, especially in this era in the NBA where guys are just as likely to be able to change teams in demanding a trade as they are in free agency. There would have been a world in the past where, okay, I'm only going to be able to change teams if I let my contract run out, so an extension is going to lock me into this situation. Maybe I don't want that. Talked about it on the pod yesterday, and yeah, maybe there's a version where he does let the contract expire, and as long as he can get more than $60 million total in salary in 2 years in free agency, maybe that 1 year extension for that $60 million isn't so valuable. There's versions I could see of him not asking for that extension, but I think we all tend to assume there's going to have to be a conversation there. So how those talks go is going to come out. It's the Suns, it's Kevin Durant, it's a great team in the NBA with a lot riding on it, and it's one of the most famous players in the league. It's going to come out. So there's going to be more noise naturally. The Olympics, he's going to be mandated to participate in media availability during the camps, during the games, all of it. He's going to be asked about all of this. We know he's not going to like that, and none of us would. It's probably not going to be framed the way he wants it. It's probably going to feel like a little bit of a trap, and maybe that's fair. I mean, I don't know. I can't see the future of exactly the wording of how these questions are going to come up, but yeah, I can understand as an athlete feeling like I'm stuck here. I have to answer this question, but what am I supposed to say? Well, you have channels. You're Kevin Durant. You have a podcast. You have any guest opportunity you could dream up. JJ Redick, Draymond Green, any person in the world you want to go talk with, you're going to get a yes. Leaks, any of it. Any attempt to say this is actually where I'm at. This is what I think. This is what I feel. This is what I want. It's not this person's fault. It's not that person's fault. It's this thing. This is where I stand, and a Shams Charania tweet that says Kevin Durant has made it known to the Phoenix Suns that he is in support of the Mike Budenholzer hire and expects to continue the season next year as a Sun. That's not hard to do. We see that stuff plenty. So there's only so much pushback that I can do against some of these rumors until that message comes back from KD and KD's camp for us to know where he stands. Until then, the noise is not going to go away, and it's not going to help anybody. What would help is to say something. Give fans peace of mind. Set the record straight. And end the nonsense. Of course, this organization's not just Mat Ishbia, Kevin Durant, and nobody else. There's a lot of other folks here that deserve blame for how things played out and could also help set the record straight. We'll talk about those folks, the other stars, the new coach coming up next. First, today's show brought to you by Prize Picks, the best place to play daily fantasy sports. Get in on the playoff action, win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks this spring, as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during basketball's postseason. You can now win up to 100 times your money with as few as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 with lineups from basketball, hockey, and beyond with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Let's say you like Caitlin Clark, and you like Nikola Jokic. You want to go more on assists for both. Sounds great. It's a fun little lineup to sit there and watch tally up those assists as basketball continues. Go for it. In addition, you're not going against an opponent or a league or a pool. It is just you versus the Prize Picks player projections. All of that plus quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types all combined to make Prize Picks the #1 fantasy sports app. So go to prizepicks.com or download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA when you do make your first deposit to get it matched up to $100. That's Prize Picks, the app, the website. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA when you make your first deposit to get that deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Closing out the show, talked about Ishbia, talked about KD. I think both of them, in their own ways, contributed to the messaging around the Suns right now, and I think both could do their part to make it go away, but that's not just on them. I go back to the Bradley Beal non-answer on Frank Vogel after the season, right? And even the KD answer about defensive, anything he says feeling like an excuse, right? Or being defensive or whatever, explaining it away. Beal was asked about Vogel and kind of said the same thing in the practice facility the day after Game 4, where he was like, I don't really like the type of question you're trying to get me to answer about Vogel's future. They're going to decide what they're going to decide, and I think he's a great coach and a good dude. He was also then photographed going and talking to Vogel after that. So mixed messaging. I'm not really sure what happened there. Booker talked up continuity, just sort of owning up to the loss and being outplayed and being better the next time. We're not really sure where he stands. So look, none of these people have said the wrong thing or, Mat Ishbia didn't come out and say everything's on the table and this season was a failure. Kevin Durant didn't come out and say my first full season with the Suns was not what I expected and I'm going to, consider what my future looks like. Nobody said anything like that. Beal kind of, split the difference. Book just sort of took it on the chin. But again, it's the buck has to stop somewhere, and I started with Ishbia for a reason. He makes he calls the shots here. We know that by now. So he has to be the one to set the message, set the vision, and that's, again, why I started with him. But that's not to say other people can't help get there, right? It's like, I don't have anything wrong with what Beal said in the Vogel question, but generally speaking, these guys have ability to leak, and they'll be around media at various points this offseason. If it matters, go further than platitudes. Say something that matters. Book will be at the Olympics. What does he have to say here? I even think, I don't believe any of the players, at least at the top of the roster, were at Frank Vogel's press conference. Will they be at Budenholzer's? I mean, my bet is no. These guys are busy. I understand. They got shoe deals and commitments, and they're trying to take their time off, and they don't know when these moves are going to get made. It's not like they have a calendar with, okay, Vogel fired this day, Bud hired this other day, and I got to be in town. I get it. But it would be a show of solidarity. It would be a show of purpose and vision. I think where Suns fans have been frustrated for multiple years running now is, okay, you flame out against Dallas. You lose in Game 6 and your star center rests unexpectedly against Denver. You get swept by Minnesota. It happens. I mean, it's not pleasant. Nobody's excited about that, but whether it's Booker not even speaking after some of those moments, whether it's, defensiveness from Ishbia, quiet, or kind of this shiftiness of answering from these star players this year, what is the North Star? Where's this settling into? What's the direction, the vision? All these words I keep saying. It can come from anybody. It can come from everybody. It's got to come from somewhere. And so that brings us to Mike Budenholzer. You might be asking, what can Bud really do? What can he really say? One, he's coming into a situation as like the stepdad. He's filling in where the old guy didn't step up, and he's cleaning up the mistakes. He's trying to turn this into something that it has not been able to be turned into. But I'll just remind you, right? Monty Williams once took over the culture of this organization and set that message, set that foundation, set that vision in spite of Robert Sarver, a bad owner, an awful dude from all accounts. But nevertheless, noisy, messy, and it was still able to be, okay, Monty's the face of this. Monty's the kind of heart and soul of this thing, and you understood it. So, yeah, Mat Ishbia is out there more. He's public-facing, but I see no reason why a star player or a coach can't be the foundation of the team anyway. Don't even get too married to the Suns, right? The Knicks, their owner is involved in some heinous allegations around the WWE right now, and is very well. I mean, he's disliked. He's not a guy that people enjoy in James Dolan. But the Knicks have turned it around. They have a front office that's been able to set kind of get things going, and they have likable star players, and they've been able to make the second round 2 years in a row. The Clippers, remember, they got Chris Paul when Donald Sterling was still around. I know I'm giving examples of bad owners, and I don't think Mat Ishbia is a bad owner. I don't feel like he's really any better or worse of a person than any of these other people. You know, he's not some kind of villain. But the collective decisions over time and the collective playoff failures over time that the Suns have sat with, that is what is leading to this moment. Somebody should step up to make it a little cleaner, a little less chaotic. I don't know who that's going to be. But again, it could be anybody, and it would go a long way. That'll wrap us up for the day. Hit follow, subscribe if you have not already. More episodes throughout the week. I'm sure we'll get that press conference sometime soon. We'll get assistant coaching hires and more. Stephen Perjone will be here to close out the week talking Suns as always. So get all those shows in your feed and more throughout the offseason by hitting that button down below. And I'll catch you guys next time.